Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is Annie 255, and I'm updating Module 7, and we are going to do a video on using Maya 2024. There have been a lot of issues between 2023 and 2024 when it comes to particles and rendering and all that sort of stuff, so it's kind of come to a surprise to me. So I'm kind of forced to use 2024. I prefer to use 2023. My videos are over 2020, but 2022 and 2023 should work just fine. So if you download 2023, you sure can, and you can follow the videos I already have. Or you can go ahead and continue using my 2024. And I'll show you some workarounds. Of course, this will be an update, so you can use 2024. Okay, your scene has to be in this scale to get the results that I'm getting. So let's pay attention to that real quick. Let's go to, I got everything in a layer. You can see my scale is going to be centimeters. Okay, so we need to check that. So go to Windows, Settings, Preferences. Okay. And this will open up. Go to Settings and make sure your working units, you're in centimeters, not feet, centimeters. And then click on Time Slider. And under the Time Slider Playback, we have Play Every Frame. And we got max playback speed at 24 frames per second. Okay, click on Save. And that's the first thing you got to do. And next thing you need to do is make sure you scale your objects to about the same size that I've got. So go to the front view, and what you want to do is scale your picture up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 units up. Okay, 10 grid units. This is a grid unit, so go 10 up. And then your glass is about 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 10 up for the picture and 5 for the glass. Of course, your picture can be a little bit wider or whatever, thinner, doesn't matter. And then you're going to create a cylinder, just a plain cylinder. Make sure that you're going to be able to fit it in, so you cannot touch the insides. Okay, so you're going to have a double wall for the picture, right? So you can't have it touching the bottom or the side. So just kind of know where you're at. Zoom in if you have to, and you can hold the Alt and down arrow and get that position without even touching the manipulator. So hold down the Alt and the down arrow, and I can see the bottom of my pictures right there. So that's kind of how tall you need to have it. You don't want it much bigger than that because it will fill it up pretty quickly. But you do want to go ahead and pull it back out again. We also don't want it touching the sides of the pictures because you'll have some collisions with end particles that you don't want. It's called interpenetration, and it'll tell you when you do it. Okay, so you'll take the top off, the faces on the top and the faces on the bottom of the cylinder, and then of course you place it in there like this, and we'll take it from here. Again, get it down as far as you can without touching the bottom, and that's it. That's your scene. You'll create your tabletop. Okay, and I'm not worried about textures right now. What I basically did was just selected this, right-clicked over it, and went to Assign New Material and clicked on a blend, and just turned the transparency up a little bit. I've already got a blend on both of those, and the transparency, I'm going to go Control A. I call it a glass texture. It's not really a glass texture, but I'm going to turn it about 50% transparent for those two objects. So that's what I did with the materials. That's not going to be my render materials. We're going to be using Arnold because we're going to be turning the end particles into a liquid and then we're going to convert it to a mesh. Okay. The results are not that great, but I'm just kind of taking you through how you can use end particles. It's kind of more of a stylistic effect. It's not like, it doesn't look like real liquid. I think it looks more like curdled milk to me. or thick clay, or it's just not quite as realistic as water. But if you need something really quick, it's the way to go. Of course, nParticles is probably the weakest effect in Maya, meaning that it's fast, but it does not look as realistic. Now, Bifrost is better. Bifrost, we're going to be touching on Bifrost, and that gives you a lot better results. But then again, it's not photorealistic. And then you get into Phoenix FD, which is going to be the last thing we get into, and that will give you realistic results. It's actually really, really well done. It's a third-party plugin. So we'll be doing that at the very, very end. So if you want to download it, it's free. You have to download V-Ray first and install it on your computer, and then you download Phoenix FD. All right. With that said, then you'll kind of know what to expect. All right. So let's get started. So we're going to take that container, and we need to select everything, and we need to kind of clear everything out. So I'm going to go ahead and center pivot everything to itself, and then click on delete by type history and freeze transformation. So this will clear out your scene. Again, we want the picture about medium poly, the cup about medium poly. If you go high poly, I mean higher than the resolution I have here, it may slow down. I've got a RTX 2080 Ti, which is about 3-4 years old. So you probably have something better, and that means your machine will run better. That's about it. So that's the scene start. Okay, so let's get started with the particles. Okay, so we're going to select the object, and we're going to create it. We're going to make a container out of this. So I'm going to hold down the space bar, go to nParticles, and go fill object. And we're going to keep the resolution at 50 right now. It comes in at 10. So change that to 50. Everything else looks good. We'll click on particle fill. And at this point, let's go ahead and just close that window, and we will open up the particle shape. Okay, you won't see anything you won't see any of this open, so you're gonna have to open these things up. Okay, so I'm not gonna close them all, but you just open them by clicking on the arrow. We're going to keep everything the same. Okay, now if your particle size is a little different, it's because your scene scale or your scene size is different. Leave it as it is right now. Just leave it as it is. Okay, and we're going to kind of scroll down a little bit. We're going to scroll down to, let's see here, this one right here under shading. That one there tells us what it looks like. And now in my 2023, in my videos, my old videos, you see these like blue spheres. And the problem is, and the issue and the bug is that it's not showing in 2024. So that's why I created this video. This is kind of making a mess of what you guys want to do. So what we have to do is we have to force my 2024 to see these particles. So I'm going to move that from points and click on the down arrow to spheres. You cannot use blobby surface because that does not show. So we're going to have to use spheres. That's the workaround. And I also wanted to make sure that container, I'm going to click off and click on the container, and you need to turn the container off. So I'm going to go Control A, get into the channel editor, and under the layer editor, I'm going to click on make a layer for my container and turn it off. Okay, that way we can see our particles now. Okay, all right, particles look good. Let's click on them. They're easy to click on now. And I'm going to go back to the shelf, or excuse me, the attribute editor. So Control A, and then go back to nParticle shape. So with this done, we want to change a couple things. Okay, so before we even do a simulation, the radius looks good. Let's just basically the radius, and we're looking at the separation between them. We don't want them touching each other. We also don't want them so small that they won't solidify together, or like blobby surface, the threshold. We want, and these will still stay separated until we mesh them. But right now, there's a couple things we need to change. We're going to keep the radius the same. That looks good. And we're going to change the collisions to self-collide. That means all the particles will collide with each other. That means that if I were to now do a simulation, they would see each other and fill the picture up. Okay. The collision strength and all this stuff is good, but you need to know if you, of course, there's no bounce. So if they're bouncing up and down, there's not much we can do about that. We can turn the friction up a little bit again, but we don't want to do that right now. Just keep it at 1.1 and stickiness at 0. Now these things you can mess around with, okay? But just be careful not to go too high, or just remember that what the default was so you can go back to it if you make a mistake. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit more, down from the collide, to enable liquid simulation. So I'm going to click on enable liquid simulation. Now on here we're going to do viscosity at 0.15. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. And then under velocity or viscosity scale, I'm going to change this surface tension to 1. All right. So with that done, we're going to go ahead and play the simulation, see how that looks. And normally you can just play it from here. Now this is going to take a while. Also, we need to change my timeline from 1 to 200 to 1 to 400. So at the bottom you'll see these little tabs here, and frame 1 over on the left hand side, and then over here will be your end rate. We want the end rate to be 400. So select it and just kind of click on it and type in 400 and hit enter. And then you see this little time slider. Okay, we're going to click on this area right here. It's going to highlight, and then you're going to click left mouse button, click on it, and drag it over to the end. There we go. Now we have from 1 to 400. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and simulate, and this is going to take a while depending on how fast your video card is. So I'm going to pause the video and we'll come back. So just be patient with it and go ahead and simulate now and pause the video. Okay, this is actually working pretty fast, and it's going right through the container. Now that happened to me before because I forgot to put collision on. So let's go back to frame 1, okay? And that's one thing I forgot. So let's go ahead and add the collision to the picture, okay? So that's why they went through. So I'm going to select the picture, and you want to do these one at a time, okay? And we're going to go to end cloth, and we're going to click on create passive collider, okay? And we're going to do that to the table as well. End cloth, create passive collider, and then the glass. And then we have end cloth and create passive collider. So all three. Do not select them all three at once. Do one at a time. That'll really mess things up for you if you do that. Right. We can see this glass has a little yellow manipulator here. That's just called a nucleus. And the nucleus tells us that there's a rigid body. So when you click on this, the picture, the particles should collide with the picture now. We have the same thing that the particle collision has. It is a bounce, a friction, and a stickiness. So you have two things you can actually finesse and tweak a little bit on both objects. Okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and play the simulation again. And this might take longer now that I have collision on, so I'll pause it and you just pause the video while yours is going to as well. So go ahead and play the simulation. And you can see it fill it up. Okay, this is going to go pretty fast. So I'm not going to pause the video so you can see what's going on. And they're going to splash up again, just like real water. If you pour water like that into it, it's going to splash up a little bit. And some might come out. Some might even go through the floor. Don't let that worry you. It's okay. Looks like they're containing pretty good. There's only a couple that are falling to the floor. Okay. And we got one little one that was going to be on the rim there, but it's not. So again, these little particles may not see the collision on the floor, but they did, so they're there. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is, once we get that simulation done, we basically want to set, we don't want to have to simulate it every time, so let's let it go for a little while. So all the pieces will just kind of fall into place, let them settle. Okay, it's still running. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this. Okay, a lot of times if you hit the escape key, ESC key, it will also stop the simulation. We want to select the particles. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Windows. Sometimes that's easier to find in the outliner. So I'm going to click on outliner and I'm going to click on particle. And the particles are now a square because they're all spread out now. You can see particles on the table. That's what's happening here. That's why you see a little square outline. So with this is we want to create a set. So basically we don't want to have to simulate every time to get to this point. We want them to settle in the milk pitcher. Okay, so we're going to select the particles and we're going to set it the way it is right now. So I'm going to go to Fields and Solvers and go to set the initial state. So I'm going to go to initial state and set for selected. Okay, now what that does, and whenever you're doing particle simulations, you guys probably already know, or dynamic simulations, you've got to start from the beginning again. So I'm going to close this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the back arrow on my playback. There we go. So it goes back to 1. Now when I play this now, I do the simulation again, you can see that they're not falling down. They're already in the container. This is what I want. Okay? So I'm going to close that and go back to the beginning. Okay, so now we got to keyframe our animation. We have no idea how this is going to work out. And yes, we have a couple spots from the top view that you can see that I've got particles kind of spread across. That's okay. I'm just going to ignore that. And you should too. Okay, so let's go in here. And we're going to set a key for frame 1. So make sure you have it on frame 1. Hit the S key to set a key. And then you're going to go to frame 30. Okay, you can either type it in here if you want to, on the lower right hand side in that area there, or you can just move the. Now you don't want to scrub because that'll make your particles go crazy. So you either have to type it in, which I just will. Just type in 30, hit enter. And then you want to hit the S key again, which creates a keyframe for that picture, for that item at that frame. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, and I have no idea, the shape of your picture is going to be different from mine, so the particles will react differently. So this isn't perfect math or perfect science here, so we're just going to have to play around with it a little bit. So I'm going to type in the next frame I want to do is frame 200. Okay, so you guys can go ahead and type in exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to click on that guy and do Control A so I can see my attributes over here. And I'm going to just type in, so if you got the same scale, you can try this and see if it works. 0.239, hit enter. That moves it over a little bit, and then Y will be 4.096. And I've done this animation before, and it was pretty good. You might have to mess around a little bit more, but rotate Z. I think I had 71.64. 71.64 for rotation. There we go. And what you want to do is set a key, so hit the S key. There we go. Awesome, that's 200. Frame 200. Then type in frame 240, because again, you don't want to scrub. If you scrub, the particles go crazy. So 240, we're going to do x at 1.368, x at 1.368, 1.368. Back it up a little bit, and then 4.184. So that brings it up just a smidgen. And then we rotate to 49.41. 49.41. There we go. And that means that we've already poured what I want out of it, and then it's coming back up again. And then I want to hit the S key. Okay, hit the S key. That sets a frame there. And then 300 will be our next keyframe. So 300, we're pulling it back. So I'm going to type in 300. And we want to go ahead and set that up to 0.044. Hit enter. And then we're going to do 4.184. And that's about what we had before. And this time, the rotate I think that's all we had for 300, so that's not a big deal. So let's hit the S key, and then we got 340, and at 340 everything's zeroed out. So 340, and everything is zeroed out. So let's click everything here and zero that out, hit enter. And that just brings the picture right back where it was, and we're gonna hit S key for that. Okay, so what I decided to do, instead of, I'm going to skip the simulation and go ahead and cache this out. It should cache out the same. I don't think there's going to be a problem. Maybe I do have to simulate the whole thing before I cache it, but let me try caching it first. And you want to cache the particles, not the object. Okay, so I'm going to go into Windows Outliner. There's nothing there. I might have crashed it. That happens. Windows Outliner, there it is. Go to particles. Okay, so I want to cache the particles. So you have to be careful what you're caching. So I'm going to cache the particles. The animation is moving, but the particles are not. So I'm going to cache those. So ncache, create new cache, and go to nObject. All right, so do I want to rename? I've already got an existing cache. So replace existing. I'm just going to replace it because otherwise it's going to take up a lot of memory. So once you cache something, it's probably better to just keep replacing it. Otherwise you're going to have to go into that file and replace it. So I'm going to go into click replace existing. Okay, now it's going to cache this out. It's going to follow everything. It's caching everything right now. This takes a while, so I'm going to hit F9. If something goes bad, I'll come back right away. Anyway, now you can play the simulation from the beginning and see how it looks without having to wait. And you can do this over and over again until you're happy with the simulation. Yes, we spilled the milk, so that's okay.